Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're joining from. Welcome to Echoing Green's Leader Lens series. We're so glad you're here. My name is Liza Miller, and I'm the Vice President of Thought Leadership at Echoing Green. At Echoing Green, we believe that social innovators are uniquely positioned to drive new and necessary solutions to communities around the globe. This Leader Lens series brings you directly into conversations on the big questions shaping the future of social change. Today's conversation is co-hosted with the Ballmer Group, which is committed to improving economic mobility for children and families in the United States. Since 2023, Echoing Green and the Ballmer Group have been proudly partnered to support early-stage leaders working on economic mobility through our fellowship and catalytic capital programs. We are incredibly grateful for their partnership and to bring you today's conversation on the future of economic opportunity. Today, we will spotlight three Echoing Green Fellows who are a part of this partnership: Shawan Jackson, Shantae Elliott, and Godfrey Riddle. These leaders are exactly who Echoing Green exists to find: bold thinkers with deep ties to their communities who we spotted at the moment when the right support and capital could change what's possible. That work depends on sustained investment. We hope that today's conversation helps bring that into life, and we invite you to be a part of it along with us. With that, it is my pleasure to welcome Ishana Smith, National Director of Community Impact at Ballmer Group. Hi, Ishana, over to you.
Hi, good morning. I'm on the West Coast today, so good morning to everybody. I'm so excited and happy to be here. Thank you, Liza, and to the entire Echoing Green team. On behalf of the Ballmer Group, we are honored to co-host today's Leader Lens. I have the great privilege of working as a director on our national community impact team at the Ballmer Group, which gives me an extraordinary opportunity to meet and connect with amazing leaders from across the country who are committed to strengthening economic opportunity. Our mission at Ballmer Group is to improve economic mobility for children and families across the United States. We fund across a range of systems following along the cradle to career continuum, from early childhood to K-12 to workforce and beyond. In addition, we invest in community-led transformation in place, data tech infrastructure and capacity, and advocacy. And we know that this work takes not just dynamic and charismatic leaders, but supported leaders. I just want to share three thoughts about why we invested in Echoing Green and why we are so very grateful to partner with them in this moment. First, Echoing Green taught us something. You all may recall the report that Echoing Green authored with Bridgespan in 2020 on racial equity and philanthropy. And that report was a game changer for us. It helped us to understand at a deep level about the built-in funding disparities that arrive almost immediately when leaders of color, especially, begin their entrepreneurial journeys. And as a funder that is focused on increasing positive impact at scale, we understood that the access to capital or lack thereof at the beginning of the journey predicts who will and who won't be able to be positioned for scale in the future. And that report gave us a way to articulate this challenge and to communicate in very compelling ways internally as to why this challenge was so relevant to our mission. Second, the Echoing Green Bridgespan report, after reading that, it led us to go even deeper into our research, and we got really clear about the existence of inequitable capital chasms, specifically facing social entrepreneurs of color throughout their founding journeys. I'm sure you all know that of all of the 1.3 million nonprofits in the US, only 2%, which is about 26,000, have annual revenues of over $10 million. So we know that even if you can make it to that $5 million mark, that's even extremely difficult. But that if you do make it there, you have a much better chance of having long-term success. So we really wanted to work with a partner that we could work side by side with to put more early stage entrepreneurs on track to meet that first $5 million milestone as a starting point and to help them not fall out of the pipeline. And what we knew is that Echoing Green's model of capital plus care was one that was very, very critical. And so while the capital is critical at the early stage, we also know that having access to a supportive community, key networks, opportunities to grow skills, and space to innovate equally matter when it comes to long-term entrepreneurial success. Third, together, since our partnership was announced in 2023, we've supported 66 Echoing Green social entrepreneurs, and we are very grateful. Right now, many are pulling back from supporting the next generation of economic mobility entrepreneurs because resources feel scarce. And there is a leaning towards securing what is already in place. And, that makes sense. And I understand that. And we are grateful that with Echoing Green, we can continue to support new solutions and up and coming change makers because these times especially call for a robust leadership pipeline for the future and big and creative solutions to solve the deep challenges that we are facing right now in this very moment and those that are still ahead. I just want to close by honoring our three panelists, Godfrey, Shantae, and Shawan. Since 2023, the environment has gotten much harder. Funding is more uncertain, and a lot of organizations that were gaining momentum are now having to make very difficult choices. The leaders that you're about to hear from are navigating that environment in real time, and we are looking forward to hearing from them. But I just want to personally thank you all for all that you do. I know it is not easy, and especially not right now. But thank you for getting up every day and choosing to lead and choosing to build and choosing to go after your dreams and supporting your communities. With your brilliance and your leadership, you could be doing anything, but you choose to serve. And for that, I just want to say that I see you and that Ballmer Group is proud to support you in partnership with Echoing Green. With that, I know you all want to hear from these amazing and dynamic panelists. So with that, I want to invite today's moderator, Esmeralda Herrera, Director of Capacity at Echoing Green, to the stage. Over to you, Esmeralda.
Thank you so much, Ishana. It's a pleasure to be in community with you, and we appreciate your unwavering support of Echoing Green. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming three incredible fellows to the virtual stage. Shawan Jackson is a 2021 Echoing Green Fellow and founder of Vocal Justice, based in Oakland, which aims to mobilize Black and Brown youth to be the next generation of civic leaders by teaching them to advocate for social justice. Shantae Elliott, a 2020 fellow, is the founder of Tassel Turn, based in Chicago, which seeks to ensure that housing is secure and foster involved high school students graduate connected to college, careers, and community. And Godfrey Riddle, a 2024 fellow and one of our newest fellows, is the founder of Civic Saint, based in Kansas City, which seeks to eliminate the racial wealth gap for Black Americans by creating artful, affordable homes made of compressed earthen blocks. And thank you all for being here. I'm excited to jump into this conversation. We love to hear from the audience throughout the webinar, so feel free to pop in the chat and share any reflections that come up. So before we jump into the work itself, I'd love to start by grounding us in your day-to-day reality. As leaders on the forefront of change, each of you is building a really complex system and in very different communities. So what is something recent that you've seen or experienced in your community that is energizing you and shaping the way you think about economic opportunity right now? I see you smiling, Shawan. How about we start with you?
All right. Thank you everyone for joining. I think what's energizing me right now is seeing how our vocal justice teachers are continuing to show up for our students we are supporting one vocal justice educator outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and many of his students are Latinx youth, some of whom are undocumented. And we know it's been a really challenging season for that community in particular. And he's fighting. He is showing up for them, making sure that they get the financial resources they need and new types of education. And that's fueling my own cup as I think about showing up as well.
Thank you so much, Shawan. Shantae, what about you? What is something recent that you've seen or experienced that is energizing you?
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to this conversation. I think for me, what's really energizing me is that many of our students, as we're approaching the end of the year, are now preparing for graduation, for college graduation, and that is super exciting. We've gotten requests for letters of recommendation, and so I think just knowing that our students are will be graduating and literally turning their tassels in the coming months and weeks, is really exciting, and what is really fueling me these days.
They're gonna turn their tassels soon, Shantae. Rec season in the house. And what about you, Godfrey? What is energizing and shaping the way you think about economic opportunity right now?
Absolutely. So I always look at life from a housing-based lens. And for me, it's exciting to see people understand the impact the quality of their home makes on their outcomes, from health to social impact, to economic mobility, of course, and specifically moving away from heavily carbonized, what I've dubbed the petro timber home that's just full of toxic chemicals, most of which the FDA and other governing bodies don't even directly test. So things like the plastic detox on Netflix and the growing awareness of how to live without a plasticized life is exciting to me. It's a market opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you so much to each of you three. It's great to hear all the ways that you're being energized. Um, let's start off with this question that I'd love to ask all of you. So economic mobility and opportunity is often framed as like this individual challenge, right? Work harder, get more education, climb the ladder. But it sounds like you learned along the way that the ladder itself is broken or was probably never built for everyone. And you all address the systemic issue from a variety of intersections. So I really love to dig deeper into your unique approaches. So Shawan, your work with Vocal Justice is about mobilizing the next generation of civic leaders. And your work suggests that civic power is actually a foundation for opportunity. So I'm curious, how do you think about that connection? What role does civic leadership play in economic opportunity? And what happens to a community's economic future when young people are excluded from decision making?
I think one of the reasons I was most excited about this panel is because we have this broad way that we're thinking about economic mobility, because it is not just, let me sign up for a youth training program and then I am good to go. I think about the role of civic power, both in terms of what helps people to secure a job and then thrive when they're there. And part of what makes it challenging to secure a job today is that you don't have a social safety net that even gives you the time or the flexibility to engage in robust education programs or robust job training programs. Godfrey, I love what you were saying about the work you're doing in the housing space, for example. When we have civic leaders, be it politicians or others in the community, who are ensuring folks have access to good housing, to healthcare, to childcare for their families, then you are in a position to ensure that those students can actually develop skills and engage in education programs that prepare them to secure jobs. But what we often hear from our students is that it's even hard to engage in those education programs because their basic needs are not met. And so we need civic leaders who are ensuring that social safety net is really strong. The second thing that I think about is what happens when you actually have the job. You get that job and then you're there, but you need to make sure that you have business leaders who hold equitable mindsets about how to support their employees. And I think civic leaders can hold business leaders accountable to doing that, thinking about how do you make sure you have policies where compensation is transparent, for example, for everyone, to make sure that certain communities are not left behind. How do you make sure you have adequate time off that you can take as an employee to ensure that you are able to pursue your passions and live a healthy life. And so I think civic power plays a huge role in terms of that social safety net piece, in terms of getting folks to the workplace, and then also holding business leaders accountable to create conditions that allow everyone to thrive there.
Yeah, Shawan, thank you for sharing. The, it's hard to engage, even if it is present. How are we creating that safety net? And I think, Shawan, what you're describing really raises a deeper question about the conditions people, young people in particular, need to participate in the first place. So, Shantae, you're supporting students who are navigating housing instability and foster care while trying to graduate high school and transition into adulthood. What do you think of the question raised by Shawan about what young people need to participate in decision making in their community? And from where you sit, how honest are we really being about the relationship between education and economic mobility in this country beyond the diploma? What does it take to move from survival to stability and from stability to opportunity?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I do think that an echo Shawan's statement, especially as he highlighted the need for networks, which is also an important component of economic mobility that we don't discuss enough. But I'll start. Are we being honest? I don't think we're being. I think we're being honest. However, I don't think we are being transparent. I think that we're being honest based on the preview that we come into the work and we think about education and economic mobility. However, for me personally, transparency is where I think the missing piece of the puzzle is. So, for example, I think that often today we think about education and we kind of paint educational attainment as a panacea. And we're seeing that that's really not true, and that's not really a guarantee, and it doesn't solve all of the intersectionalities that many students, especially our students, navigate: instability, foster care, trauma. So, in many ways, education is more conditional. And it's conditional as it relates to economic mobility because you need other supports that are not a part of the curriculum while you are in school. And unfortunately, there is a hidden curriculum in education, in college, that our students don't know about. It just is. And so it's important if we're thinking about economic mobility, the diploma matters, but it's really not enough. And that's unfortunate. I think we've made progress around the access piece. So we think about federal programs such as financial aid, federal college access programs under TRIO are all very helpful. However, that does not guarantee opportunity. So if we think about students and young people that Tousletown serves who reside in non-traditional spaces where college recruiters and admission officers don't go to recruit, such as group homes, residential facilities, access they have because federal legislation has granted them tuition waivers for college. But the opportunity they don't see because admissions officers don't recruit at group homes, don't recruit at housing insecure shelters. So I think when we think about economic mobility, I think we have more policy and more pathway around the access piece, but now it's the opportunity. And if we want to talk about stability, what it really takes is belonging, and what Shawan was hinting at around social networks and social capital. We need to help young people access and get into contact with the social capital, whether it's mentoring, whether it is senior leaders, as Shawan was saying, to help them stay in these environments post graduation, post a degree, post the diploma, and then they can be and navigate economically in an upward way.
Thank you so much, Shantae, for those reflections. I want to continue with this theme of stability. So let's turn to Godfrey. You're tackling similar questions about stability and opportunities like head on through housing. Housing, as Shantae was describing, right? Like housing is not just a shelter, it's one of the ways wealth is built and transferred in the United States. And your organization is driven by the mission of making home ownership accessible to more families. But let me ask you the bigger question. When we talk about economic opportunity, are we actually talking about repairing or redesigning systems that were designed to create wealth gaps in the first place?
Thank you for that question, Esmeralda. And Shantae and Shawan, I really echo everything you said. To answer your question directly, Esmeralda, the answer is yes. We are thinking about redesigning those systems because, in many times, in many ways, they were created by those with power and privilege to benefit their lived experiences as they were at that time and for perpetuity. This conversation, the opening that Shawan outlined and Shantae about the various aspects of stability and healthy outcomes is encapsulated for me in my Vista experience. Volunteers in Service to America, for those not familiar, it's a national service program where individuals build ladders out of poverty for respective communities. I was in the city of Phoenix. And while I was there, I read a book called Class Dismissed: Why We Can't Learn or Teach Our Way Out of Inequity. And it is the summary of this conversation. We really need three, no, regardless of where you are in the world, you need three aspects to have healthy outcomes. First and foremost, stable and affordable housing, ideally housing that doesn't poison you and lead to outcomes like cancer. I'm also a cancer survivor, and it is environmentally based. Secondly, you need a living wage. Doesn't matter what you do, no matter how smart you are. If you're even Barack Obama or Michelle Obama intelligent, there's no way you can work yourself out of a hole if you're making minimum wage. There are no amount of degrees that can pull you out of that hole. And then finally, it's a robust safety net, which Shawan mentioned, and Shantae as well. Having supports that catch you when you fall and also allow you the capacity to build back up. For example, yesterday I was talking with my brother who lives in social benefit housing. He lives on disability because he has a traumatic brain injury, and the struggle he's facing of trying to save in order to grow out of that. There are actual limits that say you can't hold more than $2,000. So how are you supposed to have safety within yourself if you can't even build up your savings account for that rainy day? And that's if you can even get to 2,000, because most Americans don't have more than $500 in their bank account, about 60 to 70%, depending on which sample you look at. So when I think about our business, we've taken a holistic look at housing as a core economic and health driver, because when you think about owning a home, it touches every part of the economy, empowers you to participate in your local civic environment, and it also gives you the stability, like it did for me during COVID when I was recovering from cancer, to have security and safety to endure. If I would have been renting at that time, I guarantee you I would have been homeless because I physically was not able to work.
Thank you for sharing that, Godfrey. And what I'm hearing from all three of you is that economic opportunity is about power, stability, ownership, and the systems that shape all three. So let me ask you something a bit bolder, all of you. What is one thing that the social impact sector, especially philanthropy, needs to stop doing if we're serious about expanding economic opportunity? And to follow up, what's one thing that you wish we could start doing? Shantae, how about I start with you?
Yeah. So one thing that the social impact sector should stop doing and one thing they should start doing, I think that the social impact space, in particular philanthropy, um, starting off should take more deep breaths. And so by that, I mean they should really take a deep breath in the time that we are experiencing a new moment or a new crisis or a new problem or perceived threat. And I say that because often philanthropy by design is to respond to problems, to challenges socially. And I understand that and I support that. However, philanthropy also has a history of changing funding strategies based on a new moment or crisis that happens. And so when that happens, it creates serious instability for organizations in the social impact space. Um, and I think that that instability really limits the work of organizations that have been supported by whichever philanthropic institution. Um, one example is a recent example is COVID. Everything shifted to remote learning, and then there were many philanthropic organizations that, stopped supporting direct service work that also happened to be in person. And that really crippled many organizations because the philanthropic organizations wanted to create new ways for students to learn online. I'm not saying students shouldn't learn online. We're a tech-based solution.
I think we may have lost Shantae for just a moment. Um, while we wait for Shantae to
Right?
get,
So
we got you
am I
back.
here?
We got you back,
I'm
Shantae.
sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure which part y'all heard. I'm talking about philanthropy, so then I just couldn't, so then I dropped off. But I'm back. So I think that I'm not sure what part I left off on, but I think that philanthropy should limit should limit how quickly they change their funding strategies based on um, a new crisis or a new moment that happens or a new trend. It's really crippling the social sector, and it creates a level of instability that many are not aware of. Because even when they change and they develop new funding strategies, the organizations are still in the community doing the work. And now that limits our ability to really scale at a pace that we want. The second part of your question, one thing I think philanthropy should start doing um, is providing capital, but also sharing power. I think that philanthropy, the providing capital is one part of the puzzle, but philanthropy also holds great power that they should also share with the organizations that they support. I think an example of that, if we're thinking about corporate philanthropy, for example, government affairs, for example, these institutions have government affairs offices that are knowledgeable on how to make issues visible to elected leaders, to politicians. What does that look like for a corporate philanthropic organization to loop in their government affairs teams when they start supporting an organization, to also ensure that and share some resources for that to that organization about visibility in elected and government spaces? So I think providing capital, but also sharing power is something that I would like philanthropy to start doing. And in doing so, I think organizations will be able to achieve scale much more quickly and will be able to achieve sustainability much more quickly as well. And then lastly, organizations won't have to work in isolation so much.
You threw out so much there. You know what, Godfrey, Shawan, is there anything you want to like just jump in and address based or add on to what Shantae just shared?
Shantae, yes. It's what I was thinking the whole time you were talking. I have lost track the number of conversations I have had with potential funding partners who were going through a new strategic plan process as if the social issues we are navigating have not been present for millennia. And I don't understand why we're constantly shifting strategies, though I do appreciate wanting some rigor behind how you're allocating funds. But it does make it very disorienting when you are a new organization trying to build a strong financial foundation to do the work and you're in that constant survival mode because the plans from all these funders are constantly shifting. Related to that theme, one other thing that I think the social sector and philanthropy in particular should stop is over-indexing on innovation over impact. there is a tendency to want to constantly invest in the new, shiny, sexy organization. But what strikes me is that the solutions for economic mobility are quite simple. And we know what works. It's direct cash transfer programs. It's ensuring that young people have a holistic education. It's ensuring that people have social and economic power within their communities, are involved in decision making, and the constant push for a new technology or a new way of thinking in some ways is beautiful, but in many ways it's actually stifling our progress because we're investing in something that seems nice on the surface when we need to be paying attention to what the actual impact is behind that. And oftentimes that new way of doing things isn't actually moving the needle as something that we know from years as tried and tested, like just giving money directly to folks as they're trying to support themselves economically is able to do. The other thing that I think the sector should start doing, building on what Shantae shared, is investing in organizations that are engaged in intergenerational decision making. I think when we think about power sharing, a big part of that is about power sharing between adults and young people. And many times, as we think about how we can advance economic mobility, we are focused on what we think young people need, or we're focused on what the companies are doing today and saying, okay, how can we make this a bit better for the next group that's going to come in without actually talking to young people? No one in the tech world will build a product without talking to the folks that they want to use it or to engage in that system. So in that same way, we need to make sure young people, as future, if not current workers, are a part of those conversations. So what does it mean for them to shape what the job training programs are going to look like? What does it mean for them to inform what professional development looks like as for existing employees, or what compensation structure should look like that would be enticing to them? This is not to say that you only listen to young people, but it is to say that they have to be a part of the conversation because they're going to have different vantage points on how to do this work. So that push for power sharing between generations, building on what Shantae shared, and prioritizing impact over innovation would be my big pushes for the sector.
Godfrey, come in here. I saw you thumbs up. What Shawan and Shantae were saying. I know you got something. Come.
Yeah, girl, I'm like, can I keep it real? Two things. So I echo that entirely. But for me, my background is in fundraising. I've raised over $20 million for the arts and other nonprofit initiatives at white-led organizations versus black-led organizations. Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, to be specific, literally the most successful dance theater in written history. And we've got to stop underfunding requests and applying overly administrative barriers to said money. If you want to support diverse organizations, if you want to support people who are actually on the ground doing the work, you can't treat them like they're a Fortune 500 company with a huge accounting and administrative team behind them, and they have clean audited financials. Do you know it costs on average $24,000 to have an audit of your financials? What nonprofit has that sitting around? It can be as little as 12 if you're able to find someone of smaller scale, but still, that's a grant in most cases. That's an operating budget in most cases for startups. So we've got to be real about that. And I think in order for philanthropists to understand that, they have to become more humble, straight up. You have to be able to sit down and meet someone where they are, acknowledge the privilege that you bring to that conversation, because then you're able to open up your doors, open up your heart, and most importantly, open up your resources to understand how you can truly move the needle for that person and that community in front of you that you're aiming to serve. Um, and that really is the onset of trust-based philanthropy. That's what Echoing Green does. Another great example of that in my own community is the Sunderland Family Foundation. I've been fortunate to receive a gift from them. And we have to understand, too, that philanthropy is set up as a patriarchal system where the ones with power and privilege are holding the strings and telling you what you can and can't do with their money, which is a non-starter. because honestly, general operating dollars are some of the hardest to raise, especially as an entrepreneur of color, especially as a woman of color or an LGBT or other intersectionality. And we don't get those dollars, but we need them the most. So, I mean, let me stop going off on this tangent and just say that trust based philanthropy is important. Fully funding requests is important. There's a reason I asked for that money. And if you don't feel that way, be humble, be transparent, and talk about it with me so that we can come to a solution. And if it's not a fit, be real about that. Like, you're not hurting anyone's feelings if you're real and upfront about why it's not a fit. It's like dating. You're not going to match with everyone, nor should you if you're really intentful and true about your values and your commitments.
We keeping it real around here, Godfrey. We're keeping it real. We love it. Shawan, Shantae, Godfrey, feel free to come off of mute. And is there anything that you want to talk about or address based on what everyone has said so far?
There is one thing that I would like to add, and Godfrey was alluding to this. I think philanthropy, and we think about funding, philanthropy should also fund runway. I mean, I think when runway is a very common concept in traditional for-profit structured companies, and the same it needs exists on the community-based organization side, nonprofit side as well. So I think philanthropy should also fund runway. So that I have colleagues who are raising traditional VC dollars and traditional funding. And I am just always so fascinated after they successfully finish their raise, they stop fundraising for a time period, go do the work and have this runway and so that they can continue to build their team and grow and scale. And I'm like, I'm fundraising every day. I'm fundraising right now talking to you all, okay? Because because it just never stops. So I think philanthropy should also provide a level of runway to early organizations as well. I mean, there are other leaders in the social space. They start one org, leave, and then they start another. And because they have these years of experience, they get this 2 year of runway to build the next thing. That's beautiful, but it's also necessary for early stage organizations as well. So that's the only one other thing that I would add.
Strong agree with that, Shantae. I went to business school, and what struck me about that space is people who could raise 2 years of funding pre-product. I couldn't imagine being a nonprofit leader who had multi-million dollars in the bank without a program that I have run with thousands of young people across multiple cities. And I think we need to have graciousness in the social sector to make sure that we are building something well, and that does take time. Related to that concept is, I think, an over appreciation for outputs in the social sector instead of outcomes. We say we want transformative change, we say we want to shift systems, and I have been surprised and frankly disappointed by the number of funders who just want to know how many people are you reaching. Okay, it was 100 this year. Is it going to be 1,000 next year and then 10,000 next year? And while I deeply appreciate scale and think we all should be thinking about how to support as many people as possible, we have to make sure we're really rigorous about how we're measuring the change in financial situation for the people that we're partnering with, their housing situations, are they graduating? And when we're constantly just saying year over year, how many people are in the current program you have right now, we're missing the opportunity to really track those long-term metrics. And they are long-term. So we need funding that's going to support us for not 1 year or 2 years, which if I get a 2 year grant, hallelujah, but 3, 5, 10 year grants so we can really measure both the short-term changes for our young people as well as long-term how their economic situations are improving.
Godfrey, is there anything you wanted to just add? I know Shawan, no, you're like, look, we've said it. We've said it. We've okay. So Godfrey, earlier you said something about trust-based philanthropy, right? And it's been truly inspiring to learn of the work of each and every one of you are doing across the country. And we know that this work can be challenging. And you've all said this, like the social innovator journey can be super lonely. And so it's even more powerful to have you all three here. And so back to this trust-based philanthropy, can you share how being in the Echo and Green community has impacted you as leaders and your work in this field?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, it introduced me to what equity really looks and feels like. Um, what does it mean for a venerable organization or institution to truly partner with you, stand beside you, and then even elevate you toward pursuing your dreams, your calling, your mission? So, for example, tracking back to my time at Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater versus my current organization, Civic Saints. At Alvin Ailey, I remember how much $5,000 and the amount of metrics that were required, the financials, the organizational budget, the future planning, the asking for contingencies if the funds didn't come through, and what you would do next year if you didn't get that small grant. For an organization that had a $1.8 million budget and had been in existence for now going on 40 years. At the time, we were celebrating our 35th anniversary, if memory serves, um, versus Echoing Green. You ask, of course, what the funds are for. You do your verification checks to make sure I am who I say I am. I'm a nonprofit, I'm an LLC. And then your impact reporting requirements are very light. You make sure that, of course, I spent the funds as I said I did. If I didn't, I have the ability to explain to you what decisions led to me having to go or pivot in a different direction. But you're not constantly asking for quarterly reports, asking for deep, detailed metrics about the head count of people I served. You care most and more about the change I'm making and what resources I need to bring that into fruition. And you also approach me in that scenario as the expert. You don't doubt what I say. You don't doubt my capacity to make this change. In fact, in some cases, you believe in me more than I believe in myself. So that's what trust-based philanthropy can do and how you can show up as a trust-based philanthropist. And I also think with that, from a funding perspective, speak to your peers, speak to those who have been champions for this method, and ask them what you could do better to be more like them or find your own path into trust based philanthropy, because it is the revolutionary change we need if we're serious about making a difference in the world today.
Thank you. I mean, at Equine Green, it is a true honor to be able to support each and every one of our fellows. Shawan, Shantae, is there anything that you would like to add in terms of your journey at Equine Green community and how it's impacted you in your field of work and as leaders?
For me, two things that were really helpful, and plus one, everything to you said, Godfrey. One was the capital. It was unrestricted capital that was very sizable relative to our organizational budget, and that offered us a lot of relief so that we could focus on doing the work and not be in this constant rat race of trying to raise money every single day. And a lot of those dollars we try to put directly in the hands of young people. We know that we can have incredible training programs around using your voice and partnering with adults to make social change. But many of our students are not going to always do those programs unless there is a financial incentive, and having a sizable grant that allows us to not just prepare young people to thrive economically in the future, but receive funding right now was really critical to our work. I'm also thinking about what Ishana shared in her opening remarks about capital and care, which was definitely my experience with Echoing Green. 2025 was hands down the hardest year of my career. It was a time when I had to downsize our organization given the political and economic realities. And I remember being here in Oakland with Echoing Green folks who were in town. We were all together and just being held emotionally during a very tender time, and having one-on-one conversations with folks as I was grappling with how do we navigate really turbulent times. And there are no words that can capture the gratitude that I have for countless folks who are on this call right now and other social entrepreneurs who receive receive the funding to not just support me with technical questions, but also emotionally as I was making some of the hardest choices in my career. So I have immense gratitude really for how y'all have showed up for me.
Yeah, I will definitely like to contribute to this question. I think one thing, and this kind of ties into Godfrey's point about trust-based philanthropy, one of my deep appreciations for Echo and Green is that you all provide a space for fellows to fall into to fall and land safely. And I think that is not as common as it should be for leaders, especially leaders who are navigating and creating solutions for very deep social problems and inequities. I really admire Echo and Green and some of what you all articulate around fellows, and if a fellow is starting a new venture, how that support and availability is still there. I think it's your messaging is like what we invest in leaders, not just we invest in your work, your organization, but we invest in you. And I think we need more of that in the social space. So that is one of my deepest appreciations for Echo and Green as a leader. And when you are dealing with and in partnership with traditional foundations, it's just while it may never be said, you know that they want the outcomes that was articulated at the setup at the start of the funding cycle, and it doesn't matter what happened politically, what happened in the school system, they still want that. And so that leaves a very difficult dance that you have to do. So that's one of my deepest appreciations for Echo and Green is I feel safe to fall if and when that happens and know that I will land safely and still remain in community. And that's my second point about how Echo and Green has really supported me and continues to support me. The community is always available. So yes, it's capital, but also the community. I am a first gen entrepreneur and founder. And so navigating this terrain can be very lonely. And so having a network to tap into, I think is also um, has also been very helpful for me. And lastly, Echo and Green has done a great job of letting the social space know in general that, the fellows are legit. Like these solutions and these problems that we're creating and solving, there's a legitimacy that Echo and Green also produces that makes it possible for us to come into contact and access other connections and forms of capital as well ongoing. So those are like three of the top things for me.
Thank you so much to you all three talking about trust and the opportunity to fail or fall or, capital and care. It's been really great to hear from all of you what you've envisioned for trust-based philanthropy. Now, for our final question, real quick, to just wrap us up and leave us on a high note in just a few words. 10 years from now, what do you want to be different about how opportunity works in this country? Shantae, if we can start with you.
10 years from now, what do I want to be different about how opportunity works in this country? I think it will be something along the lines of every child, every person, one knows that they have the opportunity. I think there's still an unknowingness that circulates, and so for me, that's one. And in addition to that, in 10 years, I would like for institutions to also do equity and not just say it. And I think if institutions also do make it a verb, um, then everyone will be able to take advantage of every opportunity that they should have or want to have. So, for example, I spoke earlier about how college recruiters they are trained to recruit in a very certain way. They're trained to recruit and interact with traditional family units that involve natural parents, mom, dad, maybe a grandparent, etc. But for our young people who, reside in group homes, housing insecure shelters, non-traditional spaces, they don't have a traditional family structure. And yet, one of the pathways that they need to college, these recruiters are unaware of how to converse with them and where how to find them. And so for me in 10 years, I want things like that to not matter. Like I want institutions to know that, hey, there's talent, there are dreamers, at the group home. Their circumstances have them in a situation that is beyond their control. But we need to go talk to these kids too and tell them about our institutions. And so Turn is doing some of that work. But I also believe that in the social space, it's important that the solutions we bring also provide a segue to where if we do this work and this work is supported to the degree it should be, maybe we no longer need to exist in the same way we are currently. And so I think in 10 years, issues like that and conversations like that are something that I would like to happen.
Thank you, Shantae. And then Shawan and Godfrey, 10 years from now, in a few words, what do you want to be different about how opportunity works in this country? Shantae talked about doing equity. What do you think?
First, I would hope that basic needs are met for way more people, and that means housing, food access, water, and healthcare in particular. And then in the education space, I hope that there are meaningful work and leadership opportunities that are not just reserved for you after you've achieved some milestone. We see a lot of opportunities that go to students after they've finished college and can get a certain job, or after they finish high school or a prestigious program, then they get to do a certain internship or get connected with a certain mentor. That should be happening as early as middle and early high school, because it's actually those connections with folks who are already doing some of the work that you want to in the future that helps you to build the relationships and the skills to then thrive long term. So providing those types of opportunities in schools early on to do a meaningful civic project or an internship or an apprenticeship program, I think would make me elated if we saw that 10 years from now.
And I agree with everything you've both shared. It's part of the vision I see for the future. But genuinely, 10 years from now, I want to be in a completely different world paradigm. I want to be in a place where we understand how to live in harmony with nature and end the extrusive industrial complex that we're in currently. The regenerative future is here now. We don't have to wait for it. I am one of a legacy of millions of earth builders around the world. And it's a technique that literally tracks back to the time when people started settling in singular places. But in that reality, when we have an abundance of what we need to be successful and pursue our dreams, what I'm really aiming for is a society where work shifts from profitability and valuation of self to work as service. I work and build homes in service to my community because people need a place to live at the end of the day. Okay. I don't want to be out on the street if I can avoid it. I got to be for real. But there are a multitude of ways when you shift your mindset to a regenerative economy and a service-based economy where you're working to create value for your loved ones and your neighbors that doesn't exist in mass now and actually shifts capitalism from being exploitative and extrusive to being something that's just a means to an end of positive good and outcome. And our work is a very small example of that nascent movement that other fellows around the world and other people around the world are already actively engaged in. It's not a fabrication, it is a reality.
Thank you. Thank you so much for you three being in service of your community and our community. So thank you for helping us end on that high note. I want to thank you all for this conversation. Thank you, Shawan, Shantae, and Godfrey for being with us today and for your leadership, imagination, and persistence. Together, your work paints a fuller picture of what it actually takes to expand opportunity and a vision that points us closer to power, stability, and ownership. Thank you, Ishana and the Ballmer Group, for your continued support and commitment to improving economic mobility for children and families in the United States. And thank you to everyone who joined us. At Echoing Green, we have the privilege of supporting leaders like the ones you heard from today. We do not just do it through capital, but through community, capacity building, and long-term partners. So if today moved you, we hope you'll consider investing in that work. We'll drop our link to give in the chat. Lastly, please save the date for our next Leader Lens next month on Thursday, May 14th at 12 p.m. Eastern, co-sponsored by the McNulty Foundation. Together, McNulty and Echoing Green leaders will explore how social innovation are building lasting impact in uncertain landscapes. We hope you'll join us again in May. Have a good day and see you all. And thanks again for being here.